I'm the arena director at Cross Brand in Tyler, and I've attended Cross Brand since about 2005 and all of our events and helped serve. I've been the arena director since 21. I was blessed. I took over a very well functioning arena to begin with, so it's not like I had to go in and fix anything. And I just hope I didn't mess anything up. I hope that I can share with y'all not only how we're able to get the gospel messages while just having fun, putting on events and get the gospel to people, but I hope that I can share with y'all how we started with borrowed ground and a handful of panels and people that were just willing to try to make things work. We started out with just, like I said, a borrowed arena or just some borrowed ground that we dished up, and started with play days and sortings and things like that. Now, I say this not to just say that we've gotten bigger and bigger with events, but to reach people, of course. But now we do PRCA events, we do UPRA, we've had the PBR twice, so just thinking outside the box, growing the events, growing our people so that we can reach more people. You'll hear me say this, I learned it from Mike Morrow, so I can't take credit. Sneaky Jesus. You invite them to a rodeo and they're gonna get the gospel while they're there. So I'm gonna try to stay on my outline because I'm subject to go rogue, and I'll give y'all a copy of this when we're finished. So why do we do what we do? Well, let's start with what not to do. We're not competing with other arenas or other events, because otherwise we'd just be putting on another rodeo and trying to compete with established arenas that are already, blowing out of the water. They're a secular established rodeo arena that all they've got to do is turn the lights on and announce that, that they're having an event. Again, we're trying to, as we say at Cross Brand, and it's on one of my collars, M28, which is Matthew 28:19, the Great Commission. We simplify it and say, reach the unreached and teach the reached. It's basically the same thing that Matthew 28 says, making disciples. So that is the bottom line of why we do what we do. Discipleship, evangelism, again, reaching the unreached. Community, or as we often say, one another, one another. It says it 59 times in the New Testament, to one another, one another. So that cannot be driven home enough. Just the fellowship, love on them, and the punchline is we're going to give them the gospel while they're there. Again, sneaky Jesus. We're inviting them to a rodeo just to play and have fun, or as Brett Schaefer said, reindeer games, but we're going to give them the gospel while they're there. And 3 to 7 minutes at the very most. What to do and when? Well, weekly, you've got what I've got to go on is what's worked for us. Weekly at Cross Brand, every Monday night we have roping practice. We've done it for 18 out of the 20 years, I think, maybe longer, but I know of about 18 out of those years. That's your weekly people. That's your sheep feeding. It's not as much of evangelism. Those people are there every week. They may bring somebody with them, but for the most part, you're feeding sheep. Those are your people that you already know and see every week. You're just keeping them full of the word and loving on them. So that's your weekly. Your bi-weekly. One of our sub-teams, and I'll talk about that later, I found out from somebody else that sub-teams is a new concept to some of you. One of our sub-teams is buckouts. Jerry Mathis helps lead that for us, and our buckouts are every other week. And guys, we did not know what we were creating when we had a bull rider, Milton Allen, that said, I want to teach people to ride rough stock and I want to do it as a ministry. it exploded. Cliff was around then, and you saw what happened. We went into it blind, and all of a sudden, this is the people that weren't being reached. We went after kids. We went after the ones that, rough stock a lot of times is a rough crowd. I know, I've been around it almost all my life. Cliff can relate to this too. Behind the buck and shoots, we all know, you can find anything you want behind buck and shoots at a rodeo arena. It could be sex, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, you name it. We wanted to give them something different. This turned out to be such a huge evangelism event for us, and it's just a rough stock practice, but it has exploded. Sometimes we'll buck, what, Jerry? We'll buck 40 head bulls and broncs?
Yeah, 40 to 50.
40 to 50? And we see constantly new faces. And you're talking about 7 to 10-year-olds that are getting on calves to WSPBR guys, that are my age, that are coming up and getting on practice bulls. So that is your bi-weekly, and it turns out those are your baby Christians for the most part. It just kind of fit that Buckouts were our baby Christians. Your quarterly events, roughly, it's not etched in stone, but roughly our quarterly events are play days. You're reaching kids and parents, and play days are easy to put on. It requires ground and willingness. Equipment is virtually non-existent. I mean, it's just getting people there. Quarterly play days, barrel races, ranch sortings. Early in Cross Brands Rodeo Arena Ministry, sortings were a big thing. We had somebody to supply cattle, and we had enough panels and gates to throw together a sorting pen. So we were able to reach people in that, and it was something that people could do. If they had a cowie horse, they could come and be a part of it. So roughly, let's just say quarterly on sortings. Youth rodeos. We partner with Four States Youth Rodeo, which is mostly timed events. We do our own youth rough stock because I'd rather do that all day long every day than to ever deal with youth timed events. So we've got someone else that came in that runs it perfectly. Katie and JW Cotton do an awesome job with Four States Youth Rodeo timed events, and we have them roughly quarterly, and you're probably reaching 500 kids and parents combined, and new faces again all the time. These are not people that attend our church. These are people that come from all over the Four States area. So youth rodeos quarterly. Monthly, we have a number 9 team roping every month, and have for 19 or 20 years, almost the whole time that we've been a church. We have a number 9 team roping every month. Semi-annually, ranch rodeos probably fall pretty well into the semi-annually. Your annual events, I mentioned growth earlier, and I'm talking about growing your people and growing your events. Our annual events for us we haven't done a PRCA now in a couple of years, but PRCA, UPRA, and PBR. We've had the PBR twice. UPRA we have 2 a year, every year. And then your annual roping, we have our big team roping, which I don't know who came up with that name, but it's been the big team roping forever. That's not very creative, but that's what it is. Our open calf roping, which used to be, formerly was the American qualifier event for both open roping and breakaway. And then the breakaway, I already mentioned that. Something that has really blown up for us is livestock shows. It was kind of funny at first, and Cliff and Jerry and I were talking about this a little while ago, it's funny because it's not rodeo, but it sure gets people here. Not only bunches and bunches of kiddos, but parents, grandparents, and people that you don't normally see. And they're getting fed, they're getting in front of you, they're getting the message. And even if they don't get the message, they're getting loved on. And sometimes we don't realize the impact that we have just loving on people. So livestock shows, and then clinics, horse clinics, rough stock clinics, kids clinics. We're all the time having people approach us for one, and as long as we vet them and know that we're all on the same page, we're all about doing the clinics as well, because teaching people what we do, if we don't keep people growing in our sport dies. And again, we've got them with us, they're going to get a message. So, we're throwing the lure out there, whatever it takes to get them there. As long as they're in front of us, we can always give them the message. How we do it. A 5 to 7 minute gospel message at every event. I am guilty of probably doing about a 3-minute message. And I got that from Mike Morrow, and I'll tell you what the reasoning was. We're on their time, and if you go long-winded, you're going to lose them, and they're going to feel like they're in church. And they are there just to have fun, mainly. It's our job, again, to get them the message. And so I normally pick something that we have been working on in church that, for one thing, I know it's a safe topic because Mike's already preached on it, and it's gospel-based, and I kind of just give them the short nuts and bolts version of it. End it with the sinner's prayer and move on. So we say 5 to 7 minutes. I normally am closer to 3. One of the other things that we have started doing is pray preach. What I mean by that, if you haven't tried it, if you've got a crowd, they're milling around, they're loud, they're not going to shut up, or it's a bigger event, and you feel the need to get their attention, walk out in the middle of that arena or ride your horse out there and say, let's go to the Lord in prayer, or let us pray. People are going to shut up. Hats come off, they bow their head, they're going to be quiet. So you start out praying. Give the message in your prayer. It just winds up in being a little more drawn out prayer. But you've got their attention, you've got them quiet. That works really well in situations where there's so much going on. That's something that Mike Morrow tried, and he seems to know what he's doing, so I go with it. We say it all the time, and I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to say it again. Invite somebody to a rodeo. Don't invite them to church. Tell them, we're having a play day this Sunday. Come on out and join us. Bring your horse. Or just come out and have a hamburger. Don't tell them anything about church. Don't tell them about, we got a great speaker. When he brings the message, don't worry about all that. Tell them to come to a rodeo. So, moving on. This, I've kind of already touched on it, but I'm going to say it again. Work with what you have. This facility here is fantastic. Again, we started out with some panels on, or a borrowed arena. We started out with some panels in the back 40 behind Cross Brand at one point, just a bunch of prefert panels and some wire. And we dished up the ground and started having play days. When I say work with what you have, even if it's borrowed, we used to go to Dale Getty's arena because he had let us, and it was nice, nicer than what we had. Work with what you have, and that's people, money, the ground, the equipment. And, there's probably in your congregation, I know we're not supposed to use that word, you can edit that. In your crowd, in your church, there's probably people that have extra money, that are dying for a good place to put it, and they just don't know it yet. Let it be known. I'm not saying do like the old days and go beat down doors. I'm just saying let it be known. We sure could use some support for XYZ event, whatever we're putting on. Equipment. We sure could use some rough stock panels or some round pin panels or whatever, this weekend, if somebody's got a tractor that we could hook the drag on, sure would be great. So your people, your money, your equipment, work with what you have. You can throw together way more than what you think. If you've got willingness, it'll go a long way. A little bit of borrowed ground, you can make it work. The who, sub-teams. Almost as the arena director, I don't oversee everything in the arena. I have a buck out team leader. I have a barrel team leader. I have a roping team leader. The list goes on down. I am involved in everything that we do. But if you will delegate, it buys you time. It also empowers your people. You're tapping into other talents. I'm not the best communicator. I may not always appear to be the most approachable. Some of your other people may be better at that, and use your sub-teams and sub-team leaders in all of those events. Still, as if you're an arena director or if you're just very involved in your arena, you still want to be plugged in and be present and available, but use your sub-teams. Chuck wagon. Whether you're one of the lucky ones that has an actual chuck wagon, if you're like us and you just have a glorified cafe, utilize them, communicate with them, help use that as a draw. I know in the old days, and I keep going back to that, maybe it's because it's what I remember, when people start getting old, they always reflect on the old days. If you walked out of church on a Sunday and you smelled smoke, you knew we had an event, and you knew they're down there cooking burgers. And we would just head down the hill. It didn't matter what was going on. It could be anything. A barrel race, a clinic, we're still going to go down there because there's smoke, so going down the hill. So communicate with your chuck wagon. Utilize your chuck wagon. On the who, also, who are we, I know I need to be careful there. Who are we reaching? Not only who are we using, who are we reaching? Spectators, your volunteers, your stock contractors. Or it's a totally outsourced event that you're just hosting with your arena. You're reaching those people. What if you bring in something that's just a hosting event? Maybe it's a bull team tour. We've started doing that too because we're just following the trends. You either, follow trends or get left behind. You've got these guys that make all these bull teams. Chances are most of the time it's not at a Cowboy church. It's at a secular, regular, everyday arena. Those are people you're reaching as well. So your outsourced subcontractor, contractors. So in closing, for the most part, I'm still going to touch on a few things, but in closing, we say, again, at Cross Brand, we refer back to M28. It's plastered all over the church. We have it on clothing. We talk about it all the time. Matthew 28:19 through 20. And it basically, it tells you to go and make disciples. Well, and we have put it in layman's terms, reach the unreached and teach the reached. So we want to love on them through fellowship, community, but overall, make disciples. And again, have fun. That's the whole thing the whole draw of coming to the arena is people want to have fun. Invite them to a rodeo, not church, but make sure they get the gospel while they're attending. And like we've said 1,000 times, sneaky Jesus. You're just having fun, but they're going to get the message. I have included and I've got everything that's in my hand I can give to y'all. I have a checklist that we made about 12 years ago, but it's still relevant. I did add a few things. I was reading through it and noticed that it's obviously was geared towards a ranch rodeo because that was our big thing in the old days was ranch rodeos. But it's a very good checklist prior to putting on any arena event. And I've got that in the back of this handout. And I added some things that made it more relevant to what we encounter today. So I did not mean to rush through all that, but I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions that I hope I can answer. And we can go to questions now if y'all would like. Yes, ma'am.